Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Chats with Children. I hope you're safe and well. It's a glorious sunny day here in Surrey, and it looks like it's sunny where my new interviewee is this morning. And I'm delighted to be joined by Jonathan Royce, who is CEO of Bioworks Technologies. And he is going to be taking part in my Reflections and Forecast 2021-22 series that I'm running this month. And we're going to be looking back at the last 12 months and also looking ahead and getting some predictions from Jonathan as to how he sees the future progressing. So first of all, Jonathan, good morning. Happy New Year. How are you, my friend?
Thanks. Nice to talk to you. Yeah, no, I'm doing very well. Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. It's a sunny day here in Uppsala as well today.
Yeah, so Jonathan's calling in from Sweden for those people not familiar with Bioworks Technologies are based. So I'm glad to see it's a sunny day in Sweden as well. So Jonathan, before we start talking about the past 12 months and start looking ahead, for those who are not familiar with Bioworks Technologies, would you mind giving me a quick overview of the business?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Bioworks, we're a next generation developer of agarose resins. We have our own technology to produce resins that are used in the purification of all sorts of biomolecules, everything from recombinant proteins to oligos to antibodies. And our technology covers the gamut of techniques that are used in chromatography as well, everything from ion exchange to affinity.
Right. And forgive me for asking this, but there's a lot of companies who offer very similar products. So what makes your products and your company so special?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. People ask us that all the time. So, I mean, for us, it's actually, I usually say it's like the beads are the secret sauce at Bioworks, right? So it's all about the way that we manufacture our beads. We use a special technology. We start with another material than other companies. Most companies start with something called agarose, which is a sugar that's processed from agar. We actually start with agar. So we start with a material that's one step closer to the natural source of agar, which is a type of seaweed or types of seaweed and algae that's harvested out in the sea.
Right.
And our manufacturing method starts with this different material, and then we also process the material in a different way. The way we make our beads hard, which is a process called cross-linking, we use a different technology there, which results in a harder structure than what you get in more traditional agarose resins. So we are able to then produce smaller beads that are harder, that withstand back pressure better in manufacturing environments. And we also, as a result of this manufacturing process, we have a much more uniform pore size distribution. So the holes that are in the beads where the proteins diffuse in are much more uniform in size, which means proteins, they diffuse into the beads and they diffuse out of the beads in a much more uniform way. And that gives you much better selectivity than what you get in traditional agarose resins.
Right. Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks for doing that. I didn't know that. So right, let's talk about 2021. I've asked everybody this. So how would you describe 2021 in one word and why?
For Bioworks, it would be expansive. That's the word for 2021. We went from a very small player in this space that had relatively stable sales to a year where our sales more than tripled. We added a whole bunch of new large GMP customers, Novo Nordisk in Denmark, Catalent Pharma in the US, an Irish company called Nemesis. And we've had to really work hard to stay ahead of this growth. So we've done a lot of internal improvements in our manufacturing here. We've more than doubled our manufacturing capacity in the last year. We're going to do that again now in 2022. And it's been a fantastic year, really, for the company. I mean, we've grown, we've added new employees, we've recruited really extremely talented people in all sorts of different roles, and we've had a ton of fun while we did it.
And so if you don't mind me asking, what's driven that growth in the last 12 months? Because I appreciate, obviously, a lot of life science has done really well over the last 24 months, but what's driven your particular growth?
So I think it's a few things. So I think one is there are some particular classes of molecules that we have had a good reputation in, that have had more focus during the last few years, where we see a lot of growth. So those are really these sort of tides types molecules, so peptides and oligos. There's been an increased or renewed focus in that space in the last year, and that has been to our benefit. Then there's also been the fact that in 2021, clinical trials basically started again. 2020 was a year where basically there were no clinical trials except for COVID vaccines. It was very difficult to recruit patient populations. So there was very little clinical manufacturing going on, and there were even fewer actual ongoing trials for new medicines. And in 2021, a lot of companies came back into their, they returned to work from home office work. They were able to start recruiting people into clinical trials again, and that started to drive an increase in clinical manufacturing. And this sort of rapid increase in the demand for raw materials, combined with the fact that a lot of raw materials were going into manufacturing COVID vaccines, meant that both, especially I would say small and medium-sized companies, found themselves in a situation where they were experiencing very long lead times for things that they needed to get their clinical manufacturing done. And that created an opportunity for companies like Bioworks, where these users of chromatography resins, in our case, realized we need to look for another supplier than the traditional suppliers in this market. And so they found companies like Bioworks, and in a lot of cases, they found better products than what they were previously using as well. So it's been a double win for the customer in this case.
Well, that leads me to one question, actually, because you mentioned about lead times and so on. So has supply chain issues impacted you in any way? Because obviously that's been a big issue in the last 12 months for a lot of companies. So hearing what you're saying, I'm guessing it hasn't had a big impact on you as a business then.
Well, I can't say it's not been without challenges, right? So, I mean, we've had to work a lot with our suppliers to ensure that we have access to raw materials. We've built bigger safety stocks of raw materials internally to make sure that we're not impacted by disruptions on the incoming supply side. On the outgoing side, I think logistics in general has been a problem all over the world in the last year. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Logistics companies have had a hard time. I mean, we all remember the Suez Canal being stopped for a couple of weeks in 2021. That's probably not the major event people will remember about 2021, but it had a really long-standing effect on supply chains of raw materials, both in, coming into a facility like Bioworks, but also on stuff going out. And so, we've had to be creative in some cases. We had a shipment that got stuck in the US for a customer that, was waiting for material for one of these clinical manufacturing campaigns. We had to ship a second pallet of material to them just to make sure we got stuff there on time. And we did that, because we want to make sure that we're not, that we're serving our customers in the absolute best way. And, when we realize that there's a risk like that, we have to take sometimes extraordinary measures to make sure we cover that risk for our customers.
Right, fantastic. And I know you've touched on this already in your preceding answers. So just very quickly, how has the pandemic impacted you in year 2?
Well, I would say this year it's been, we've learned to live with the pandemic in a lot of ways. We've become significantly better at digital tools, both internally and also in the way that we work with customers. We have taken lots of extraordinary precautions to protect our employees and each other here in the office. Many of the people that work at Bioworks have to come to work. They work in production, they work in a lab. Right. They don't have an opportunity to work from home. So we've had to make sure that, people that can work from home do, to minimize the risk of an outbreak in the office. And we've had to, really care a lot about each other and make sure that we, don't take unnecessary risks and that we try to protect our office, our employees, and even our customers in some cases. Last year, we actually, literally the day before a conference that was planned physically, we brought in a film crew and recorded our presentation. The conference actually happened physically, but we felt it wasn't really the responsible thing to do for our employees to send people into that event when Omicron was first sort of coming to Sweden, and we started to see it was really spreading quickly. So we've had to be agile for sure, but I think, like I said, we're getting more and more used to having to make those quick decisions and transition, quickly into other means that don't shut down or cause us to have to cancel things, but allow us to still be present, but in a as low risk format as possible.
Thank you for sharing that. And my final question relating to 2021, because I know you're eager to talk about 2022, is what have been the big achievements for you? And again, you've touched on some of these a bit earlier, but what are the big achievements for you in 2021?
Actually, I would say there's lots of sort of external things you can look at BioWorks, like that I mentioned before about growth of sales and acquisition of customers. But I would say the thing that I think we're most proud of is the organization that we've built in the last year, and the fact that we've built a very stable organization in the last year. So we've worked really hard to make BioWorks a place where people enjoy coming to work, and we really believe that if our employees enjoy coming to work, they're going to do a great job. That's going to lead to positive results for our customers and future success for the company. And I think we've done that in a very sort of, to a large degree during 2021. A lot of what we've done has been about establishing that environment at the company and making sure that it's sustainable moving forward.
Well, that's really interesting you should say that, because I'm a great believer in culture is what drives a business at the end of the day. So and this wasn't on the list of questions we were going to talk about, but as you brought it up, as the CEO of the business, what do you think is the main thing within a culture that you have to encourage people to do the best they possibly can do within that business?
Well, I don't know if I can pick a particular thing. The thing that comes to mind first is really empowerment, right? So that's been one of the things that we've worked maybe really focused hardest on within the company is we want people to feel that they can make decisions that where in the area where they work and in the subject matter that they're experts in, without having to run to a manager or a senior person in the company and ask, is it okay if I do this? I mean, we hire people that are best at what they do. And I think when we do that, we also have to trust them to make good decisions, and also create, accept that people are going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We need to learn from those mistakes. But if you feel that you're empowered to make decisions, a lot of things in business start to go, you really break down barriers that make things go a lot faster, which ultimately is good for both the business and its customers, right? So I think that is, if I had to pick one thing, I would say that empowerment.
No, brilliant. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I know a lot of senior management are very scared to let go and to trust staff. And I think it's very brave of you as a CEO to be able to do that with your staff. But obviously the reflection is in the rewards you get in terms of how the business is performing, isn't it? So that's fantastic. Thank you for that. Now, as I said at the beginning, you're quite keen to talk about the future rather than the past. So why are you so keen to talk about the future?
Well, I just think, there's a lot of interesting stuff that's happening in the bioprocessing community. And the industry as a whole. And I just, as much as I'm proud of the achievements we had in 2021, I'm already looking forward to 2022 and seeing all these opportunities ahead of us. And, my mind, for me, like January is already over. Like I'm already into February, I just see so much great promise ahead for the year that's coming. So
well, that leads me on very nice and great segue there. So let's talk about 2022. So what are your predictions for the life science pharma sector in 2022?
So I think I think that we're going to see a real continued growth and activity in non-COVID related therapies. It's been there was a bit of a drought, and now I think people are really starting to come back and look at their core indications that they were focused on before COVID. And that means that in general, there's going to be a continued diversification of the industry. I mean, I think about my own career. I started in this business, now it's almost 23 years ago. I kind of joined during the glory days of monoclonal antibodies, and it felt like the whole industry was just focused on monoclonal antibodies. But we're in a period now of diversification where the types of molecules that are coming, the types of therapies, gene therapies, cell therapies, but even sort of more traditional treatments for disease that are based on novel molecules, that's creating a huge amount of diversification that suppliers like BioWorks need to be prepared to address, right? So in the world of antibodies, more or less, you could say if you had an affinity resin and an ion exchange resin or two, and maybe a Hick resin, you had a complete package for all of the companies in the world that were making antibodies. That's not the case anymore, and I think we're moving into a situation where some of these classes of molecules are actually going to demand even higher levels of customization than what the industry is historically used to. So I think there's going to be more and more focus moving forward on finding tailored solutions, maybe not totally customized, but tailored solutions to problems that we see developing because of this diversification that's happening. I think that also there's going to be a continued but probably increased focus on green. We are a publicly listed company on NASDAQ. You see that the stock markets are going to start requiring sustainability reporting as part of financial reports. That's going to make this information much more accessible to consumers. So customers are going to be able to really compare suppliers and say, how green is this supplier? What are they doing? Are they getting better? Are they making really conscious efforts? And I think this is such an important personal issue for so many people that we're really going to start to see that becoming a bigger part of how people select suppliers as they move forward. So I think the sort of transparency of how green a company is combined with the personal focus that many people have on this issue is going to start to really, those two trends are going to start to converge into something where we see more and more focus on sustainability in life sciences. I think traditionally life sciences hasn't always been such a big focus in this industry on, energy recovery and water usage reduction and other things, as perhaps in other industries that are more commoditized, where cost of manufacturing really has driven historically a lot of those issues. In life sciences, has been driven more by an ideology, but I think we're going to start to see that become a more and more important factor moving forward.
Right. Okay. And what risk do you think? I mean, the pandemic, for example, is still here.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to impact the business? And what other risks do you think are out there for businesses in 2022?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, COVID is obviously, I think still presents a pretty serious risk. A lot of people think that Omicron is going to be the end now. It's spreading so fast, and we'll all have had COVID by the end of January if you look at them forecasts. But, you never know what a future mutation might do and the effect that might have on all of our personal lives and also on the industry as a whole. I think there's also a risk. The life sciences industry for a long time has benefited from a relatively favorable investor environment. So money has flowed into this industry in a relatively positive way compared to a lot of other industries. And there's always a risk that, let's say, for example, that you have a few clinical failures in a class of molecules, especially that result in, for example, patient death. If that were to start to affect the interest from the investor side in this industry, that could create some serious risk, because then you could start to see, layoffs and consolidation of companies, both on the supplier side, but also on the actual side of the people that are developing therapies. So I think if I think about the sort of what I think are the most two likely risks, I don't know if either one of those is likely to occur, but if I think about what are the two that I can identify today, those are the two that I would probably point to.
Right. And what about opportunities for next year? I mean, you talked about some of the opportunities a bit earlier when you talked about the trends, but opportunities for change, the industry, and for Bioworks in general.
Yeah. I think for Bioworks, the big opportunities that I see ahead of us moving forward are opportunities for collaboration. We're still, we're a fast-growing company, but on a relative scale, we're still relatively small, but we have built a reputation now as a company that's easy to collaborate with, that's a good partner both to academics as well as other industrial partners. And we have a number of ongoing collaborations now that I think can really create value-added solutions for our customers and help sort of move the industry forward. And I can't speak about all of the things we have going on, but one that's been publicly announced is our collaboration with a UK company called Aptamer Group. They have a really interesting technology of how they can develop affinity ligands. They use their technology for other applications as well, but affinity ligands is one. And there we have a collaboration ongoing now to develop a product for gene therapy purification that I think is going to be a big step forward for the people that are working in the gene therapy space. So And I think in general, that's actually one theme across the entire industry that is a big opportunity for 2022 is around collaboration. I think it's sort of a combination of things that we've all lived in isolation for a year, so our interest in socializing is high right now, which creates creates a good environment for collaborations to be nurtured, and that combined with the fact that I think a lot of companies are sort of looking at their own internal core business, and think about, how am I going to expand sort of outside of this? Are there people that I can partner with where I can leverage what I'm good at and what they can leverage what they're good at, and we can get sort of 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 1 = 3 situations. So
great. And again, you mentioned one of the things there, but what can we expect to see from Bioworks in 2022?
Yeah, so I think you can certainly expect to see that we're going to continue to grow our customer base. We are going to continue to launch some new products in this space during the coming year. We've talked a lot about the fact that we see that there's a need for us to, or we get a lot of requests from customers now to expand our portfolio of pre-packed, ready-to-use type devices. So that's an area where I think people can expect to see us gain ground in the coming year. And I think that we're going to publicly announce some more of these other partnerships that we're working on. Relationships, that's super important to us culturally, both our relationships to each other here in the office, but also the external relationships that we have. So I think, we want to leverage those relationships as much as possible and continue to grow them with our partners, both in Sweden, but also in other parts of the world. If you ask me, if you ask me the reverse of that question, what should people not expect from Bioworks in 2022? I can tell you, we had a little workshop internally in December. We actually talked about, where do we want to be in not just next year, but in, several years, like 3 to 5 years. And one of the things we said, which I thought was so interesting from that discussion, was, we don't want to ever be a Bioworks, a company where people have to do business with us, that feel forced to do business with us, because we see that, that's where some of the biggest suppliers to the life sciences industry have ended up, that customers feel like, oh, I got to place another purchase order with that company. I don't really want to, but I have no other alternative. I mean, that's a situation we are going to work very hard at Bioworks to never end up in. It's a little bit the sort of Apple and Microsoft situation that from the early days. Now maybe Apple's actually become that company that people feel they have. But they were able to maintain a position for a long time where they were the company people wanted to do business with. And I think that's that's where we are today, and that's where we want to stay. We want to grow the number of customers that we're providing good service to and good products.
Well, then, again, that leads to another question, which is that out of that workshop, then how did your work group say that you would be able to maintain that and keep that sort of relationship with your customers, that they do want to come and work with you?
Yeah, I think it actually goes back to that other topic we discussed, which was empowerment, right? So it's about that the people that we have working with customers are empowered to make decisions on customers' behalf without having to, go through 5 levels of approval. Yeah. I think that also, we are a small but stable organization today. We are going to have to grow to some extent as our business grows, but we also think that we have a good critical mass within the business right now. And we don't see that there are really significant risks that we are going to end up in a situation where we would become one of those companies. People can come, really directly to almost any one of us in the company. Some days I'm the person that's answering the chat function on our website, so if customers go online and hit the chat thing and want to chat, they may end up getting assigned to me, and I'll be sitting there chatting with the customer. So.
Well, that's really interesting, actually. And I think that is a big challenge for any company which is scaling up and growing, is how do you maintain the reasons that you've grown in the first place, and not become this cold corporate machine, a faceless thing where people are, as you said, you're so big, people have to work with you, but they may not necessarily want to. And it's having that sort of interpersonal relationship, or still feeling that you know someone within the organization that you can talk to and share your problems and come up with tailored solutions, as you've already said a bit earlier, which makes a difference in terms of who you want to work with and don't want to work with in many respects.
Yeah.
Right. So finally, what would be your last thoughts you'd like to leave viewers for 2022?
What did you say? Sorry.
Any last thoughts for the viewers
for
2022?
Well, I would say this. I said before, like, we have a lot of fun at Bioworks, right? And I think that's one thing I've really realized in my first year and a half here is it's so important to have fun at work. I usually say, I've had in almost 18 months, I've been with Bioworks now, right? So I usually say I haven't had a bad day at work in 18 months. I've had a few bad hours, but I haven't had a bad day. And, I think there's so much value at that. People talk about, how important it is to love what you're doing. And not everybody's always going to end up in a job where they love what they're doing. But if you have fun doing what you're supposed to do at work, that's worth so much. So I hope that everybody listening to this is having fun at work. And if you're not, if you got to find a way to start having fun at work, or, come work for Bioworks.
Well, that's a fitting way to end the interview, Jonathan. Thank you very much. And that's a great advert for the company, genuinely. Where can people get more information about Bioworks if they want to know more about the business, about your solutions, and also where can they meet you in person? I know live events are now kicking off in January and so on. So where can they meet Bioworks in the next few months? Yeah,
so you can meet us digitally on our website. It's bioworks.com, bio-works.com. And if you want to meet us physically, I think the first event that we have coming up, we have a few events coming up in March, one of which I'm going to be traveling to in San Diego. That's the ACS Biotechnology Division annual meeting. We have a few people that are going to be presenting there. And then in Europe, we're going to be at Biologics UK, and we'll be at both of the TIDES events this year in the US and in Europe. So those are some great places to meet us. Otherwise, the contact us page on our website has all of our local regional representatives. They all are mobile, have cars. We'll come to visit you, take you out to lunch, whatever your preference is, in a COVID safe way. So reach out to us. We love to meet people. We're ready and available.
Jonathan, all I can say is it's a pleasure as always to catch up with you, my friend. Nice. I wish you.
We have to talk after the Super Bowl this year as well, so we can.
Yeah, well, hopefully the Patriots would have made it, so then they'll be or the Buccaneers. So, as I'll be very, very upset. Anyway, Jonathan, as always, it's been a joy talking to you. I wish you, everyone at Bioworks, your family, your loved ones, everyone have a fantastic 2022. Genuinely, it's great to speak to you, and there's some great thoughts that you just shared there with you, and I hope people found that useful. So there you go, viewers. I hope you found that interesting and useful. There's a lot more questions actually I ended up asking than I planned to, in all honesty, because we ended up talking about culture as well, which is really interesting, I think. So if you'd like to know more about Bioworks, check out the links, meet them at the shows, contact Jonathan directly, maybe even on the chat box on the Bioworks website or via LinkedIn. And if you've got any comments about what Jonathan's talked about, whether it's about the resins, how they've dealt with the pandemic, what his thoughts are about culture, anything, what his thoughts are about the trends for this year, then feel free to put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are as well. And all I've got to say is, Jonathan, once again, thank you for your time. Have a fantastic 2022. And viewers, thank you for watching. As always, I wish you a fantastic 2022 and stay well and stay safe. Bye-bye.